I am ultimately satisfied on the balance of probabilities by the evidence of fingerprint, photographic and tattoo evidence taken together, supported by the evidence of changes of name, that Mr. Knight is indeed Nicholas Rossi, the person sought for extradition by the United States. I would have been prepared to accept the fingerprint evidence alone as sufficient for that purpose, and equally, I would have been prepared to accept the photographic facial identification evidence and tattoo evidence taken together as sufficient for that purpose. I therefore require to answer the question in section 78(4)(a) of the Act in the affirmative. The person appearing before me is Nicholas Rossi, the person whose extradition is requested by the United States. The court will adjourn.
Are you Mr. Rossi?
No, my lady. You might have to take that off just to get to talk. So she can lady.
Is that a yes? I'm having a hard time.
My name is Arthur. Now you pray.
I think I'm going to have the jail restate what he said. Having a really hard time hearing him.
What is it? My name is Arthur. Knight. Right.
He says his name is Arthur Knight. Brown?
Arthur Knight Brown. Right.
I can't hear. Your Honor, have him state his name and date of birth.
Yeah, we can't hear him at all. Can you ask him, can you please state your name and date of birth?
Here, get a little closer.
Lady, my name is Arthur Knight Brown. My date of birth is 22nd of the 11th, 1986.
Okay,
I think we're having a problem with understanding who this person is.
This is not number 36.
Your Honor, we've got him as Nicholas Rossi, but he's saying his name is Arthur Knight Brown.
Oh, that's one of the AKAs, it looks like.
What's your birthday?
We're having a really,
86.
is it July 11th, 1987?
No, my lady, it's 22nd of November, 1986.
22nd of November, 1986.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, Tamara Vasquez for the state. This individual has been extradited. He has not admitted his name or birth date accurately, and so I don't think we're going to be successful on that today either. It's also known as...
Objection, my lady. That is complete hearsay, and I would ask your ladyship that the prosecution show cause for why they proceeded to allow
Mr. Knight, I'm going to...
Whilst I had an appeal pending in the Supreme Court.
Mr. Knight, I'm going to appoint a lawyer for you. There's a no bail warrant in this case, so we're going to set it for a detention hearing in 10 days.
So, this ruling by the judge triggered one of the most crazy cases of 2024 so far. This case is also very unique in itself. I've never seen one like this in all my true crime coverage so far. And it is a case that is bordering on one big question. Who is Nicholas Rossi? And in trying to answer that question, it hopes at possibly having a chance of unraveling the mystery behind the fugitive who was accused or who is actually being accused of faking his own death. I digress. Welcome back, guys. I trust you are staying safe. Now, let's get into the case. So, who is Nicholas Rossi? Originally, Nicholas Rossi is a man wanted in Utah, America, for some sex offenses that he committed against some women as far back as 2008. And he had been on the run since, so a warrant has been issued for his arrest and he's being hunted by the police and other security agencies, as should rightly be the case, right? Exactly. But so far so good, they hadn't been successful until it turns out that a man has since been arrested in the UK with a different identity, but then fingerprint tests have been conducted on him, DNA checks have been done on him. He has very unique tattoos, which all these come together to be very consistent with this same Nicholas Rossi, who is wanted for these sex offenses against these women as far back as 2008. So per the usual police investigation and criminal justice system procedure, these evidences should have sufficed for an open and shut case, right? Well, the answer is no, because in this case, the whole thing is something else, because this man who has been arrested in the UK by authorities who claim that they've confirmed completely that he's actually the same Nicholas Rossi who is on the run from the police in the United States of America for the sex offenses that he committed. This man is saying that he is not Nicholas Rossi, but rather he is Arthur Knight, and that this is a case of a mistaken identity. Yes, that is the crazy plot twist to this whole case. And now we are going to delve into it. So I really expatiate and let you know the details of how crazy this case is. He is still currently in court. He was extradited and brought to the United States, and his court hearing commenced. So today, when they went to court, Nicholas Rossi, as per what the law and prosecutors deem him to be, or as per who they deem him to be as Nicholas Rossi, he is claiming he is not Nicholas Rossi. But then, according to prosecutors and the evidence they have gathered in conjunction with security agencies, Nicholas Rossi's legal name originally is Nicholas Alvedian. Now, Nicholas Alvedian was his original name, but then he was adopted at a young age by his stepfather, who bears the surname Rossi, and as such, Nicholas at that time in the United States changed his surname from Alvedian to Rossi, thereby creating the then persona Nicholas Rossi. Now, he has been charged with the sex offense of a 21-year-old woman in Utah in 2008. But at that time, he wasn't identified as a suspect until about a decade later due to a backlog of DNA test kits at the Utah State Crime Lab. And this was then 2020. So this was like a decade after the original offense. But it turns out that at this time, Nicholas Rossi had also been accused of committing another sex offense on another woman in Salt Lake County later the same year, and faces multiple complaints against him in his native Rhode Island for alleged DV activities against others. So this is the rap sheet that this guy had. Now, just to get into his background, so we possibly have an idea who this guy is and what might have influenced his upcoming. He grew up in Rhode Island foster homes and made a name for himself as a vocal critic of the state's Department of Children, Youth and Families. But the question is, all this was when he was in the US, but when he escaped to the UK after committing those offenses, what was he doing? And how did he come by the alias Arthur Knight? Now, mind you, I use the word alias because that's what the prosecutors are alleging. But according to the man the prosecutors are calling Nicholas Rossi, he is saying he is Arthur Knight. And he is not Nicholas Rossi, and it's a case of mistaken identity and a hearsay for the prosecutors to say that he is trying to change his name and his identity to escape punishment for his crimes. So just so we have the perspective, this man went to the UK, and the prosecutors are saying he changed his name to Arthur Knight. But we are going to look at what he did in the UK and who the Arthur Knight persona is all about. So in early 2020, Nicholas Rossi told the media in Rhode Island that he had late-stage non-Hodgkin lymphoma and that he had just weeks to live. So this was in early 2020, and fast forward to just the 29th of February in the same year of 2020, an obituary was published online which claimed that Nicholas Rossi had passed on as a result of this sickness. Sad, right? No, it isn't. This is because it's looking like that was his way of ending the Nicholas Rossi personality or identity, which would then give way for him to now commence a different identity. This is the suspicion of the prosecution and the security agencies. The suspicion is that he did all this as an elaborate scheme to bring an end to the identity of Nicholas Rossi, and whoever will be pursuing him would get to that obituary and realize, okay, the guy is gone. It ends there. Now, according to his former lawyer, Nicholas Rossi had moved to Ireland in 2019, but then they couldn't also go ahead to give his exact location. Now, prosecutors are also revealing that under the guise of Arthur Brown, Rossi is believed to have met his wife, Miranda Knight, in Bristol in 2019 and gone on to marry her in early 2020, then assuming the name Arthur Knight. See where this is going? So the original fake identity he pulled on was Arthur Brown. And then in 2020, he met his wife by name Miranda Knight and they got married. He met her in 2019, they got married in 2020. This is the same early 2020 that an obituary was claiming that Nicholas Rossi had passed on due to that sickness. So he had now resumed a second identity and even gotten married and changed that second identity to a third identity by virtue of his marriage. At this point, I don't know, and honestly, I don't believe his wife is in on it. I don't think so. I think he genuinely convinced her he was Arthur Brown, because even when he appeared in court today, he had a very thick English accent, but people are suspecting that it is an accent he learned and is trying to put on, but it's fake, it's not natural, and it's not original because he's not originally born in the UK and he's just learning all that so he can blend in and hide from his past. Now, after the marriage, they moved to Glasgow in 2021, where at this point in time, Nicholas Rossi, now Arthur Knight, claimed to be a professor teaching at a university in Glasgow called the University of Glasgow. Now, neighbors told the security agencies that he used an English accent and remarked, for someone who was on the run, he really liked to draw attention to himself. And I think that it comes from him believing that he had been successful in hiding from the law and changing his identity. So he was now really ready to live his full life. Now, feedback from his wife's brother is that Nicholas Rossi, aka Arthur Knight, didn't talk about his family. He never spoke about his family. And that this brother believes that his sister, who is the wife of Nicholas Rossi, aka Arthur Knight, might probably be in denial. Now, further checks also reveal that over the decade of him being on the run, Nicholas Rossi had used over 10 different aliases. This is huge because it goes on to paint a clearer picture of how intelligent this guy is, or probably he thought he was, to use 10 different aliases and to be able to move into those characters as and when suited. That takes somebody of a very high level of intelligence. I don't know what you think, but let me know in the comment section. Do you think this guy was smart or he's just lucky? I don't even want to say he was smart, because he's still trying to play smart even in court. He's insisting to the judge that he is not the Nicholas Rossi the prosecutors are trying to prosecute him as. He is Arthur Knight, and it's a case of mistaken identity. So he's still disputing it even today in court. That is how crazy this case is. But then someone would ask, with all these, then how was he actually caught? Well, I'll let you know now. So, according to authorities, Nicholas Rossi's run from the law came to an unfortunate end for him when he was arrested in December of 2021 after he was recognized by someone at Glasgow, Scotland, in a hospital while he was being treated for COVID-19. So, at this point in time when he was confronted, he insisted he was not Nicholas Rossi, but that he was an Irish orphan named Arthur Knight, and that he had never set foot on American soil. Mind you, in 2021, he was already married to his wife, Miranda Knight. Rossi then said that he wasn't an American and he was an Irish orphan. So it seemed still controversial, but this alarm reached the security agencies. They came in, they did their bit, and now he's where he is, with a pile of evidences against him. But then again, you find Nicholas Rossi, aka Arthur Knight, is still trying to refute and dispute and challenge every single evidence laid against him. These are the things he's saying in his attempt to dispute the evidence. He's saying that, first of all, he was framed by the authorities who took his fingerprints while he was in a coma, with the intent that they took these fingerprints so that they could connect him to those crimes and solve their case and move on. So they are trying to set him up. So in that regard, he's saying that the fingerprints they are saying are his, which actually on the system is connected to the so-called Nicholas Rossi the police in the US are looking for, are not his, but rather they took those fingerprints of him when he was in a coma at the hospital, and then they went onto the system and deliberately connected those fingerprints to him. So they are not his. This means that the police and the security agencies who did that are trying to set him up. That is what Arthur Knight, aka allegedly Nicholas Rossi, is saying. It didn't end there. He went on to attack the next evidence that they had against him. This evidence had to do with very distinctive tattoos which he had, or which he still has, and matches the same distinctive tattoos that Nicholas Rossi had. So, to this, he also claims that the tattoos he have, which were matched to those of the so-called Nicholas Rossi, were also given to him while he was unconscious in the hospital. Now, I was like, no, come on, man, come on, you can't do this. This is, he's overreaching and lying to an extent where I'm sure the devil will even be surprised, like, hey, can you do this to that extent? Because this is too extreme. He's now saying that not only did they take his fingerprints and deliberately linked it to the so-called Nicholas Rossi so they could pin it on him, they also had time and decided that because they knew Nicholas Rossi, the wanted fugitive, had distinctive tattoos, they were also going to give him those distinctive tattoos. And surely, according to him, they gave him those distinctive tattoos while he was unconscious. Now, if these are true, it means that not only are the security agencies implicated, he is also implicating even the hospital where he was allegedly unconscious. when these things happened, according to what he claims. But unfortunately for him, all that did not fly, and he's now back in the US in court. Now, what is next for Nicholas Rossi, aka Athanitis? He is to be reappeared in court for his first hearing since he was extradited from Scotland. And although he insists on identifying himself as Arthur Knight, I'm wondering how this would go, because when he came into court for the plea to be entered, it became tensions actually, because he identified himself as Arthur Knight Brown and appeared from jail wearing an oxygen mask. Yeah, and that is an oxygen mask he's been wearing all this while. Some people are of the view that that was his way of hiding his face. That would make sense to me. But then again, it could also be something he needs medically, because I haven't seen any proof also showing that he is just wearing it to hide his face and that medically he doesn't need it. Maybe that is something they would also have to prove. Does he really need to be on that oxygen mask? If yes, then it might actually defeat that argument that he's wearing it to cover his face from being recognized as Nicholas Rossi. Now, he addressed himself in court as Arthur Knight Brown, and he did not enter a plea at the initial court appearance. He also didn't admit his name or birth date since he returned to Utah, so he's still disputing it, to the point that he even told the court that he is not Nicholas Rossi and that him being addressed as such and the claims of the prosecutors are not accurate, and anyone trying to say that he has changed his identity and he's denying who he really is just a hearsay. Yeah. As it stands now, as at the time of making this video, Nicholas Rossi, aka Arthur Knight Brown, is in custody without the possibility of posting bail in the Orem case, and a second hearing has been set for 26th of January. Now, if Nicholas Rossi is found guilty, he could face a prison sentence of 5 years to life. And that would explain why anyone in that case wouldn't want to even accept that he is Nicholas Rossi in the first place for the trial to actually start. This is interesting. Now, I have some comments and some questions actually. So I'm like, so what happens? This guy is trying to just dispute everything from the prosecutors, right down to his own fingerprints. Right down to his own fingerprints. He wants to imply that the fingerprints are doctored, they are manipulated, deliberately linked to him to prosecute him. Even the distinctive tattoos that match that of Rossi, he says they did that tattoo on him when he was unconscious, so he didn't have it originally. But wouldn't his wife know? Yeah, that's my first question. His wife should know whether he had that tattoo before going to the hospital to be treated or not. If it turns out that he had the tattoos before going unconscious at the hospital, then his wife needs to tell the truth. The moment she lies about that, she is then complicit and probably might have been complicit throughout the whole time. So that is a very key question I'm sure investigators will definitely look into if they already aren't. Now, my next question is, what happens if he still continues insisting that he is not Nicholas Rossi, given the evidence that the prosecutors have? Will the state decide that they are still going to continue anyway, and the judge also pass judgment on him, even if he continues to deny that identity? If that ends up being the case, how does that sentencing play out? This is going to be an interesting one, and I'm following it keenly. As and when the updates are out, definitely, I'm going to bring it to you. But In your own opinion, per the things you've heard so far and many other things you may have heard outside of my channel on this case, do you think that this guy is Nicholas Rossi or is truly a case of mistaken identity? I had wanted to sit on the fence on this one because initially I wasn't sure if he was Nicholas Rossi or he was Arthur Knight Brown, a separate different person who is actually a mistaken identity that they are trying to hold mistakenly. But then when I researched more, I got off the fence and I joined the security agencies in believing that this guy is actually Nicholas Rossi. I think that there is more to suggest he is Nicholas Rossi than what there isn't. The evidence convinces me more that he's Nicholas Rossi, so I will bet he will be Nicholas Rossi unless something else proves me wrong. And let me hear from you. And please, after this video, I would be happy if you watch my other videos and give your view on some of the cases. Sometimes the discourse also helps, especially for the new people who would come onto the channel or to come onto the comment section, might learn some one or two things when it comes to safety and security. Like I've been saying, there are different people out there. Imagine his wife is not complicit in this. And imagine it turns out that he is actually Nicholas Rossi, the guy who has been wanted for over 10 years for this sex offense on women. Then imagine how devastating it would be on his wife. It would mean that she married somebody who is a fugitive, a criminal, an sex offender who is actually on the run, and she never knew the man she married. That is something that cuts deep and could be very traumatizing on her. And if that turns out to be the case, my heart goes out to her and her family, because it would mean that the man she's been with all this while has been deceiving her and she bought into it without knowing. That is something that is huge and it could leave a trauma. What do you think this is? Do you think his wife is actually aware of him being Nicholas Rossi if you believe he is? Or you think she's not in on it if it turns out he's Nicholas Rossi and that she genuinely believes that he was Arthur Brown and by virtue of marriage he became Arthur Knight Brown? Let me know what you think about all these things. I'll catch you on the next one. Subscribe if you are yet to do so, and thank you for watching.